Welcome to the Cafe Nightly Show. I'm your host, the Goldsmith. It is the 26th of April, 2024. It is a Friday, end of the week. And of course, a number of things to go over as far as I guess it wasn't the start of the quarter. I mean, it is easy to say it's the start of the quarter AMA about the Q2 2024 priorities, or Q2 2024 roadmap. But it was our first AMA in a while. It was something that we had a number of curated questions. Again, questions coming from the community, questions pulled from Twitter, questions pulled from the YouTube comments during the event that were answered. And again, it was. I did say curated, and I do mean that. It did feel very much like there was certain topics. There's topics from different spaces of Upland that were represented, and it was kind of fun to see it feel like there was a plan there. Of course, some of the questions were coming live, which is always nice too. But there was a plan there where we were trying to touch, or the team was trying to touch a bunch of different aspects of Upland. Because as of right now, there are a bunch of different aspects of Upland. We're starting to see a little bit of divergence or of specialization in one way or the other, where individuals may be more involved in one aspect of the game than others, or you could be broadly specialized, where there's a handful of things, maybe not everything, a handful of things that you are a part of, and you are spread a little thin. And we're seeing that variety of things that Upland is working on as priorities this quarter is kind of interesting, because they may be touching you. They all may be touching you. So get into a couple of those, and also as we look forward to them, it kind of is evident or obvious that this quarter is about Genesis Week in many, many ways. So that is kind of a run up towards what is going to happen Genesis Week 2024, how things are going to kind of coalesce around the future of Upland. Of course, Genesis Week, if we're funneling towards Genesis Week as a destination, that is where we're kind of going to see that divergence pop back out for the rest of the year. Genesis Week is going to breed or bring about, or at least set up the rest of the year, where different parts, different aspects of the promises or the things that are coming out of Genesis Week are going to be fulfilled over the entire year, some sooner, some later. But of course, if we look at this quarter, we look at some of the answers to some of the questions, we can see what's happening soon. We can see that some of the priorities that people have been asking about for a while, where they fall on the roadmap, if they're coming soon, if they're not specified. And it's nice. It was nice to see some of the aspects of things that people have been asking about for a very long time, at least to get an update and say that is not gone, that is still an option, that is still coming, whether or not it's happening next week, to see that it's still there. So I do want to kind of shout out that idea, that concept that was really done well here in the AMA, of highlighting the individual items that, again, hadn't been highlighted for a very long time. And we'll get into all those, of course. Gotta get the disclaimer out of the way, because speculation does abound. All these opinions expressed by myself are mine and mine alone, should not be taken as game strategy or financial advice that represent the game of the team of Upland. Any guest contributors who we do have on, they have their own opinions. They are welcome to them. They don't represent myself, the Goldsmith, the Cafe Nightly Show, or the game of the team of Upland. Should not be taken as financial or game strategy advice. Easy enough. And usually we have, and usually I have the opportunity. Who's touching us? I don't know. Geez, who's touching who? Usually we have the opportunity to come over and share my screen, and we can look at some announcements and say, "Ooh, this is interesting. Oh, isn't this interesting?" Read along, follow along. But it's an AMA. So we did have a video today, the AMA taking place in YouTube, on YouTube, also being broadcast. It's also being streamed in Layer 1 Upland Plaza, to follow the AMA, a meetup of sorts, a little community meetup in the Upland Plaza. So there was a lot that was done, but it wasn't done on paper. It wasn't done with words. It wasn't kept track of in a way that's easy to fall back and take a look. However, it is recorded. So you do have the opportunity to go and see the AMA roadmap that was broadcast earlier today. If you haven't got a chance to do so, take the chance to do so over the weekend. Obviously, a lot of priorities that are in there are going to unfold over the next quarter. So it is definitely worth worth noting that not everything's happening tomorrow. It's not imperative that you read it or watch it tomorrow, but you do have the opportunity. You do have the opportunity to set up this quarter in a way that makes sense to you. Reevaluate what some of your priorities are, maybe types of properties you're purchasing or what you are looking at, crossing your fingers on and hoping for based on some of these updates that we got today. And I'm going to do broad strokes. There's already been some reporting on what happened. Some been great reporting as far as looking at the individual items that came through. More Cheese did a great job kind of breaking out some of the key themes. I've got my own key themes that similar along the same lines. Some of the most important questions or burning questions that many people have had over the last several months, have gotten answered in one way or another. And even if that answer is it's coming eventually, don't ask us more, but it's coming eventually, but I can't give you all the details at this time. And of course, included within Sparklet and how Sparklet plays in, there's some themes of decentralization. We can kind of get into where that plays. We have cars and racing, obviously. We had some great questions about meta ventures and UGC and more power to it. We had a question that defines, some of the future of UGC with one of the most important questions of UGC that, hasn't yet been answered, hasn't yet been followed up for a while. So we'll get through all of that. I do want to start at the top, and I've kind of got it chronologically how things happen throughout. And I got there's some things I'm going to deviate on a little bit because they're concepts, they're thoughts, there's things that I've been looking forward to, maybe the questions that I personally have been looking at, or in a couple cases, I've heard a lot of other people be deeply interested in this piece or that piece. So definitely may take a couple deviations along the way. First and foremost, this concept up front, and again, this is key and this is timely. This is something that we're seeing evolve, and it's kind of been discussed. It was kind of discussed in the previous. Just in the regular roadmap update. This is a concept of monuments and monuments to come, and monuments potentially having a differentiated use case than anything we've had in the game of Upland before. And I kind of had this thought or this question not too long ago personally, which was, what is our differentiation between landmarks and monuments? Because I know we were talking about special features or differentiation of how they are tied to seasons, and that was kind of that definition that came about was there's a tie to seasonality at this point for the monuments, but the ultimate thing as Don put out was the monuments are going to have an inbuilt utility potential. You can call it gamification, you call it a utility, whatever it is, an inbuilt utility that is intrinsic to that monument. And again, two more details to come. This is obviously going to be future monuments, and it's going to already be inbuilt with an earning potential, and it already being defined more or less in the same way that we could develop a dev shop, and a dev shop could be tied to a property, and you could build all those parameters yourself, but instead already built into that property, already intrinsic to that property, with the future earning potential of whatever that is tied to that monument, with the potential that monument being exchanged between parties. I like that definition. I like that differentiation between monument and landmark. I also do want to historically look back and say there was a time when landmarks, we were being told landmarks were going to have the potential of having the future of hosting events or having interactive spaces tied to them that other properties may not have. And we had been told that way back. Monuments obviously sound like they're closer to that, with the idea that we're not going to see that same functionality in landmarks right off the bat, and just a generic landmark obviously having the ability to have a custom structure built on it. Obviously, there's a historical importance. There's a reason why it's designated as a landmark, but also in Upland, there's a custom one-of-one structure that emulates or looks very similar, at least in most cases very similar to the structure that's already there, that's there in the real world. And you have that one-of-one opportunity to build that structure that's not going to exist anywhere else in the game. And that's a huge boon for a landmark. It makes a landmark very, very interesting. And even without that idea of this property having, that unique access or ability or potential for hosted events. That makes it interesting. And but there was a eventually and a soon comment on there, was the eventually and the soon that kind of came out of this, and I really appreciate that the way they brought that in and put the additional note on it, put the little additional sauce on that, was, landmarks as a whole will probably have that interactivity or that ability to build those immersion spaces before other regular properties. Monuments is where it starts, obviously inbuilt to those, that unique bespoke, whatever that utility is, whatever that gamification is, or whatever that interaction is, built into that property and moving along with it with ownership. Landmarks may have that to follow, but the key thing is, and then it talks about this as an extension that would include and extend to all properties potentially having that idea of immersive spaces eventually. And I say potentially, but that's the goal. That's the roadmap that's on there. It's just not the roadmap for this quarter. It's just not the roadmap for next quarter. It's not something that's going to happen very soon. But it was interesting to give that revitalization that, this immersive 3D spaces or events on an individual property to extend to any property in the game of Upland. Very exciting. Looking forward to seeing that work its way through. And again, I mean, without a real scale of time, without knowing what priorities are going to happen first or how long it's going to be, it's just promising. It's just promising. It's just not a guarantee to look forward for. But if I'm going to be in the game for perpetually or forever, forever, um, we are going to know these are priorities that are out there. The idea that was dropped here at the not the AMA itself, but previously at the quarterly roadmap, was talking about 20 years, to what's happening in 20 years. It was brought back here with this 20-year principle, and the evolution of something like Roblox that grows and scales and builds and becomes more, and it becomes more interconnected with other ecosystems. And that kind of got dropped here as well. I think it was dropped in some other themes here, was the idea that Upland having those ties eventually getting built in that direction, where it is like Roblox for adults, more or less, where you have that building base, where you have that interactivity, the place where you can have experiences built on top of and interconnected by both the economy, obviously, but the tools, the utilities that are built along the way through blockchain and through assets. So that's an interesting piece, and went a little further off kilter on that one. Racing the consumables and boosts. That was a question by me. Yay. First question, obviously, by Uplando for the landmark versus monument. Second question was by me. Racing consumables and boosts. So the concept, has been out and has been discussed about the consumables. They're not here yet. They're coming soon. We're likely seeing them later this quarter, at least what it sounds like. And consumables, obviously, potentially raising the MPS of the cars, potentially taking a car that should not be racing against the Series 1, for example. Maybe, I don't know, it's a Series 4R. Maybe it shouldn't be racing against the Series 1E, but now it's going to be able to hold up because now it's got some consumables. It's got a one-time boost or a boost for this entire race that increases its stats, so it's going to perform better. The question of the skill, the question obviously was, how does that tie into the overall racing ecosystem and the structures? And obviously, it's in that race, if it meets the MPS of this other car, and it's going to qualify in that MPS, gating of the MPS race. And because of the way the boosts work, and because they change key components of the racing of the car, individual racetracks, individual configurations for individual racetracks are going to make a big difference, and they're going to make determinations of who may or may not win that race based on how their car is set up. And I think that's an interesting concept. X1 has a little aside about the future of making these racing vans and that meta opportunity with people kind of trying to take what is and make it better. But what was also key here for me is one more takeaway on the side, above and beyond just redefining or at least going back to this concept of what's going to determine the overall performance of your car. But along with that is there was this concept, this question of my question about stackability was how do how is that limited? What is the maximum amount of effects you can layer? Can they be layered? And the answer, obviously, they can be. There will be some limitations. They're potentially one of a kind. You can only have one of a certain boost per race potentially, with the idea that your individual number of boosts may also be limited by MPS scoring. So if you're in top tier, you may not be able to just boost the crap out of it 1R to the point that it's an insane Uber vehicle and number one performance in the game. There may be some performance requirements there when we talk about MPS, but yes, that's already been considered. The stackability, the number of individual boosts you can have with you, but of course they are stackable. I can make my car different because I'm having a couple different boosts. I can choose which boosts I focus on, obviously, because the number of turns in the racetrack or the straightaways or how that racetrack is constructed and what I might be doing differently for that racetrack to perform better. And I like that concept. I think that's a key part of starting to have the strategy or build that strategy about racing, not just learning the racetrack, but also how do I customize my car for that racetrack? And right alongside that idea of bespoke customization, building that car around the race, making my car that I start with a little bit better. This concept that had almost died and almost fell to the wayside comes back again, and that's the idea of race car driver. This was something that originally the race driver, when we originally talked about cars in the first place 2 years ago, racing in the first place 2 years ago, the concept was, we're going to have drivers, and drivers are going to improve the score, and you're going to improve your driver so that your driving is going to be different. And then we went the direction of, now we have more interactivity, and it's actually your performance, what you do the turns, you are putting the boost, you have the opportunity to boost. And this is all relatively new, but that became a big focus, and it was a great focus. Again, the idea that what you do during the race outcomes the overall performance of your car during the race. That's a huge concept, and I'm glad that we have it. It makes the game more fun, more interactive. It puts people more in control of what's happening during the race. But we get back to that concept of making those decisions strategically before the race starts as being part of that race. When consumables come, that's relatively soon, we're going to have that idea of kitting your car out or building your car out in a way that you expect is going to make that race experience better for you, or your style of racing. Maybe you're better at corners, or maybe that a specific racetrack, you're going to want to have this extra boost at this specific straightaway. Your knowledge of that racetrack might make the customization of your car for that racetrack the difference between winning and losing. So that's kind of an interesting concept. But then on top of that, the idea of leveling drivers or having drivers, previously discussed as being tied to block explorers, then discussed as, the technicalities being there and the specifics of making this happen or building this out being there. And the realities of having to make it all happen, logistically becoming a question, to the point where it got tabled and it didn't come back, and now it's back. The concept that it is down the road, but eventually drivers also playing in alongside boost, affecting your racing experience above and beyond your own input as you are racing, and the starting point, which is your car. Sparklet. This was a big one, and it was a fun one, and it's a big part of the game. This idea of Sparklet, and alongside Sparklet with the new players coming in, and alongside Sparklet with the way Sparklet's being distributed, and alongside Sparklet with as soon as the token gets launched. No details to come. Big point dropped, and I've made the point, other people have made the point, Upland's making the point, is they cannot directly speculate or give information at this point, because that is a regulatory concern, about a future or ongoing development for a to-be-released token. It just makes sense to me. if you are talking about a token that is not yet released, if the specifics of the when are not out yet, and Upland, you're asking Upland to give me a little hint. Tell me what month, what week, what day. Tell me what the original or the first launch price is going to be when you put it on an exchange. What exchange is that going to be on? That's information that can't be put out. Obviously, that's information that has to be distributed in a specific way. When it gets distributed, it has to come out intentionally and at the right time, and it has to come out obviously once it's finalized and not halfway across or speculating on what might be or any of those natures. So big kibosh on that. Big Upland can't talk about it, and putting too much effort into speculating on what might be and what the sale price might be and when it might happen. Not wasted effort, but wasted effort. Don't do it. There's no reason for it. But again, on the other side of that, the key thing from the AMA, this idea of the decentralization and how that's going to run in there, run its course, and be part of the game. Upland obviously having that focus and building towards that progressive decentralization. Definitely worth noting that with Sparklet and the future of Sparklet, once we do have that definition, once we do have the white paper for Sparklet and it comes into the game, the future of the game is going to be tied to Sparklet in some ways, and the future of how Sparklet, the white paper, gets modified is going to, and as it's already been discussed, is going to have some tight adherence to what the community wants, to community votes, and that's a big form or a big step towards decentralization, or a big form of decentralization within the game of Upland anyways. That's kind of interesting, exciting, and we will ultimately see that Upland's talking about the future of Upland, getting more information from the community, having more discussions around Sparklet. How is Spark going to be applied, or what other utilities, or when those utilities going to drop and come to the game. We had this concept at the end of last year, 2023, that there was going to be, before Sparklet actually hits exchanges, there's going to be some form of future utility of Spark. Being a community discussion and having more information on it. And obviously, it's not the time for that yet, but that should be coming at some point. And I think that's going to be a big part of redefining the game, and where does that line start to exist between community input and the future of the game of Upland. And then the other part of that, on the idea of the decentralization and the building up, is this idea as well, and the Sparklet on the airdrops, new people coming in, and Upland looking at how those people interacted, how they came in, and the way people interacted to fill out this socialify, and that's the way I'm defining it, this socialify experience of the airdrop platform. Again, you are being rewarded for your activity with other community members, or members who aren't part of the community. Obviously, that's the theory, people coming in new to the community, about Upland and how the information is shared and interacting with Upland's posts to do so. So that is interesting. That is fun to see. Again, Spark on the backside is fun as well. So that is something that is being reviewed and people have input on, and what did you like and how did it work, and Upland's looking at the data, and it may affect how the next chapter, the next online chapter works. And without deviating too far, we did get that drop on Sparklet that we are going to, as we do see Sparklet come, we get our airdrop here. The second is when the airdrop is. The first is when that information or that snapshot happens that essentially says, are you set up? Go ahead and set up with the link from the airdrop platform to your Upland account. So make sure that is in by the first. That snapshot happens. Who are the people who are the beneficiaries of the platform activities? Again, tying your platform activities to your Upland account. And then the second, that Sparklet that you have earned getting dropped into your Upland account. So very much something to get ready for, to put your time into, to get ready for that future that getting that dropped in. So get ready, get it done. Don't miss it on the first. The big drop after that, and again, small drop, big drop, 3D objects for executives. They're actually coming. It was a real question. It was a real answer. But it also didn't sound like it's this quarter. It sounded like it was taking a question that was asked by the public, given an answer, so we still know it's on the roadmap. But more to come on that. Obviously, that was the that was the giveaway takeaway, is it will be coming eventually. We are already planning on how that's going to be announced or how information is be announced. So apparently I'm still getting my statue, Cheese, as you put their chat statue. I'm going to be getting a 3D object, as will all executives, it sounds like. That's a nice incentive to get to that threshold of 10 million UPX value or higher. So it's nice to know this is something that's been in promise for 3 years. It was put in there as, yes, eventually, if you hit this level, keep in mind at the time there was a lot fewer people who were at that level. But if you hit this level, then there's a way of commemorating getting to this point. So we do see that that's still an idea. That's still something that's coming. That Upland is still thinking that through. And it hasn't been like, oh, wait, a hedgehog. Yes, a hedgehog statue. A big, giant hedgehog. No beaver, Cheese. Not a beaver for Goldie. No, it's a big, giant hedgehog. Oh, it's so cute. And that is probably going to be the statue. But yes, it's nice. It's nice to know that's still on the list. That's still coming. That's still something that is being developed. And from there, a couple small things, big things to follow. Sound and audio. Obviously, there's a lot there. It's deep, but it's a question and the answer essentially yes, but eventually. Flushed out a little bit. Don does a pretty good job when he talks about some of these concepts, the big concepts. Addressing the technical considerations, not necessarily constraints in this position, but more on considerations as far as where the development effort goes. What are we working on this project versus that project? The concept of at this time, at this moment, why are we not seeing more of it? And again, it's been a development item. It's been looked at. We saw early iterations of racing where there was some sound effects that were in there. I remember there was a sound effects contest and Blue Rain that dominated it, just mouth sound for the cars going on the track. And there was that original attempt at putting a little bit of sound into the racing. And then the racing went silent. And that was for a reason, a very specific reason. And as Don puts it, this is something that we want to do, but it's something we want to do well. And that definitely did apply to the sounding for racing, the way it was originally applied. They want to do it well, which is why we don't have the sound for racing anymore. It's good concept. Don't do it if you don't do it well. If you can't do it well, don't do it. So we will see that as something that's on the list. It was an answer to the public as opposed to here's one of our priorities. So it wasn't an answer to the public, meaning it's not one of the items that we should look at as being on the immediate roadmap, but it was a good answer to say, yes, we know that it's something we'd love to have in the game. We'd love to do more of it. It's something we don't want to do until we get better definition of how do we make it work well. It's going to be a priority and it's going to be done right. So I like that. The big one for me, and one of the big things, big question, small answer, was on the hackathon. Yes, the hackathon is happening 2024. It's going to be a little different than what our previous years have been. You're going to get details in sometime in the near future. That's it. That's all we got. We got nothing more to fall in on that. So definitely keep your eyes out on the hackathon. Building and property rewards. Oh, this was a great thing. This is something that Cheese has championed for years. It's confirmed that it's eventually coming. It's not imminent on the roadmap, but eventually coming. This idea of being able to rent properties, actually being able to rent properties and be able to rent assets and being able to take something that you own in a specific area and continue to have ownership, maintain ownership of it, but monetize it by allowing somebody else to temporarily use it for their own benefit, for potentially putting a meta venture on that property. You continue to own it. They put a meta venture on it. That's a rental opportunity, or renting an asset where you continue to own an asset and somebody has a reason why they want to be able to use that asset for a limited period of time, and they can give you amount of UPX or whatever, or other consideration, potentially have access to whatever the asset is, whether it's a vehicle, which there's reasons for people to have temporary access to vehicles, or it's a specific asset that may be tied to a specific event or a specific decorating. Maybe it's a structure ornament and the person only wants it for that season and you want to hold it for the next 5 years. So you rent it out at not an obscene rental fee, but at a rental fee. based on the fact that that guy's going to get his one-time use out of it, and you're going to keep it and have it for next year and the year following, hopefully. So that is one of those. That is one of those. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's going to happen eventually. Yes, we know that it's a question, and that we want to make sure you know. Yes, it was the question that was offered, that was proposed. They chose to answer it because they really wanted to say yes. It's a priority, but we want to do it in a way that protects the individuals who are the renter and makes it easy, or the rentee, the person renting the thing out, and obviously the person who is the renter, the person who's actually renting the item, and make it easy so it's easy for them to interact with. And if the asset is safe and it goes back and forth and it's where it needs to be, and it's easy for the person to pay for it, be in an escrow container, then that's great. And it needs to work well, though, because I can't be losing my assets because the escrow container explodes and falls all over the place. Lake Tahoe, Lake Tahoe. Yes, Lake Tahoe, geez. So we can't have somebody renting a car so they can go to Lake Tahoe, cheese, or some other car only city, and then having that container explode, and now nobody has the car. We can't have that happening. We can't have somebody pay a blank amount for that car, never receive that car, and the person who's renting it out to them saying, "Oh, I got to keep the car and the money." So that is something that obviously Upland wants to make sure it gets done right. Who exploded a container? We've had them happen before, cheese, where something's in a container, the lock doesn't happen right, or it doesn't disperse correctly, and the person who's supposed to receive the item from the container doesn't receive it, and it just sits there in a locked container, and it's a pain in the butt. And we've had them happen before. That it happened at one point with MetaVentures, and they're not happening anymore, so that's a good news. But some of those things that get stuck in those containers have been stuck in those containers for a very long time. And I'm glad that we're getting the iterations right, and we're going to get that improved before we start seeing it done in a more mass way, not being done just in the MetaVentures, but in a more broad way of rentals and assets and all of those broader expansions in the game of Upland. We are looking at Totem. Cycle coming soon. More information to come soon on that. Hint, hint. Go look at Twitter and make your own decision. Where there's a little hint on the drop on a little bit of maybe you can speculate as you wish over on Twitter on the futures of Totem. But again, this is something that was addressed about a week ago when the quarter roadmap update came out. This idea that there will be a little bit of differentiation. It's they said kind of tongue in cheek about it, like, you're going to enjoy it, but I'm not going to tell you anymore. So there is something there that's going to be pointing to the gamification of cycles potentially, where this cycle is going to be different than the last cycle. And the way we're going to interact with our totems might be just a little bit different, with the idea of this not just being an earning mechanism to earn Proton, but it sounds like a gamification layer, something that is meant to be more than just a part of the game. And again, the kind of the he is people complained about the first set of totems. I liked it. I thought it was one of those, all right, now I have a pattern, I follow the pattern, I know I'm getting a reward for the pattern. That's enjoyable to me. But Upland is kind of discussing about some other patterns of gameplay or game cycles that other people will find interesting or exciting. So looking forward to that. MetaVentures. So on the roadmap, the big thing for MetaVentures, or big thing for UGC, this question being asked, I think it was More Cheese again, a question from More Cheese, and then one of the most valuable, important questions on the list for a lot of people. Again, I'm not a creator. I don't have a bunch of things to get royalties from. But for those who do, the questions of royalties and when has been there. And the answer of royalties and when is sometime soon, and perpetual and backdated. So moving forward continually, but backdated once they launch, backdated to the earlier transactions. So that is a big deal. Getting that confirmation backdated. They've already said that before. I assumed it was still the case, but they haven't said it for a while, so it's good to get that reset. And it sounds like we're sooner than we've ever been before. Well, that's the way it should be, right? always getting closer to the goal, not further away from it. But very much sounds like this is something that Upland's been working on to come in the near future. If we're talking about decentralization, and Upland's talking about decentralization a lot around Sparklet, some of the new people they're bringing in are hearing the word decentralization a lot because that's their view of Upland. They haven't been playing Upland for a long time. So you have to deliver on that view or what you're putting out there. And if we can get this done sooner rather than later, that definitely feeds into that concept of, decentralization and a place for creators and a place for growing and building content. So looking forward to that landing here in the not so distant future. That is a great thing for a lot of UGC artists, and it's a great thing for people who want to create UGC who haven't been doing so, who are looking for more incentivization, and here it is. So good to see that. Totems like gardening, LOL, or raising it. Yeah, I would like to see that. I'd like to see some other, interaction where you're getting the reward, where you're doing something, where it just lines up with a different either aspect, visual aspect, or input. You input in a different way your protem to get the reward. So yeah, geez, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see how they get set up. He said by G Week. Yes, he did. It did seem like by G Week something to happen on these royalties. And again, I think the around G Week, I'll give it a little breath and say sometime in the near future, as opposed to by G Week, because if it's the 29th or it's the end of May and it hasn't happened, people go rah! But yes, I understand he did say by G Week that should be coming. Hey, Obi-Wan PR. But yeah, the idea that's coming very soon, Cheese. That is very exciting for you, for everybody else who's been creating content, and right along the way, that back payment. Oh, Cheese, what are you going to do with that? You're going to pay for your trip to Genesis Week? I don't know, but it's excited to see that coming. So yeah, more on that Sparklet obviously dropping. Keep building up your Twitters, kind of that sneak peek on that platform is this idea of enhancing your Twitter account, because that's going to be coming. But in between the Twitter chapter and the next Twitter chapter that we'll have at some point, keep in mind we do have the chapter G that's going to be at Genesis Week. That's going to be a live event for the airdrop interaction or the airdrop platform interaction, anyways. Not necessarily the online version, but an in-person version of interaction to earn Sparklet. In addition to that, Upland is saying that, yeah, we will have those Sparklet missions, we'll have the missions, and that is going to be something that, much like we see these events taking place in between seasons, these are events that may happen and may take place in between chapters. So if you've got chapters of the airdrop, this chapter here where you can earn your Sparklet over the course of 20 days, and you have this next one that's 2 months out. It may not be right next to each other, but that time in between is where you're going to have the opportunity to have those missions in the game of Upland, also earning Sparklet. So I'm looking forward to that. That was a concept that was dropped a while ago, but nice to see it come back and nice to get a little more clarification. So maybe just maybe we'll be seeing that sooner rather than later, because we know we eventually have another chapter coming up. Maybe between before the next chapter, we're going to have some missions and earn some Sparklet in the game of Upland for those who are already in the game and participating. And Cheese is going to Disney World with all of that UPX she has coming to her for all of those transactions, all of those royalties she's already earned. So that's exciting. Have good luck, have fun at Disneyland. Quality of life items to come. This is a broad concept. Quality of life items to come. When we talk about quality of life in the game of Upland, those are tools, utilities, those are searchabilities, those are filters where we look at assets and properties, our own and others, to make it easier for us to find what we want to find in the game and not have to scroll. And then after we found it, we make the change or exchange. They send that item over, and then I have to scroll all the way back through, and I don't have the opportunity to search in that list, and I don't have the opportunity to filter the way I want to filter. But those items, as those items get dropped into our assets, into the availability to filter in different ways, those are going to make it a lot easier to play the game. The good news is they are iterative in that would we get something that works really well in one segment? It can be extended to other segments of the game. If there's something that works well for assets, it could get extended to properties potentially. If there is something that works well now, but it needs to be made a little more robust, theoretically, the parts that are good stay, and then the robust details can come later. So I'm looking forward to that continued improvement of quality of life items. Racing track apps, direct question, direct answer. They are closed. Yes. They will open. Yes. So that's coming in the sometime in the future. Obviously, the idea was they're down for a month or two for the purpose of improving the overall process of applying and the process of approval. That is something that yes, they will continue to be down for a while. Date unknown, not yet disclosed, not yet discussed. But yeah, that's not going to be an extremely long period of time as well. Upland said they will be coming back. Cargo movement. This is what I've been harping on for a while, and it was kind of put out there that cargo movement's not immediate. But I've been harping on this for a while. This idea that we will have cargo movement available. I'm going to give you the hint one more time. Don't be surprised like a lot of people were surprised with cars. It was overnight. Your car could previously be moved from one property to the next just magically, like your wallet. The second transportation came into the game of Upland transportation as an individual in your car, we could no longer move cars by using them as an asset in a wallet. We had to actually use them in layer one as transport between locations. We will likely have something like that happen, that flashpoint with cargo where we wake up one day and we aren't able to move that cargo through the wallet. You have to actually move it on layer one, with your car traveling between places with that item as cargo. Upland said it's not imminent, not immediate, but that cargo obviously is coming. It's a big part of the game, and that does dovetail or tie into one of the big questions that it keeps getting asked, and Upland did answer it. Yes, you are getting your trailers. It's not been forgotten. It's not been discarded. It's not been thrown away. But that cargo serves a specific purpose, obviously moving items between places, and that trailer serves a specific purpose by being a large cargo container. You don't need the large cargo container until you have the concept of cargo, the idea of movement of assets between places, which we don't have yet. So that's essentially the answer to this. Yes, this is an item that is coming. Don't expect it significantly before we have cargo. Yes, we'll make sure that by the time or as we're getting cargo, that's when you'll get your trailers. So Hiro asked that question to me earlier today is, hey, is that coming? Did we get any answers on it? Yes, we get the answer. The answer is it is coming, and it is something that does fit in the scale of time. When we have a need for it, we will have it. So I like that, and I know that's coming. G Week is obviously going to have a key thing here with a number of return events for G Week virtually as well. This concept of the question obviously was more about the events, the type of events we've had with the scavenger hunts or these flash challenges. This idea that we had the missions, and the missions kind of they're getting ready to do those temporary missions and rewards for these missions, these flash missions that got dropped, and you had an hour to interact with them. Upland got that started, and that system didn't work as well as they wanted to, so they're going and revamping it. But those are coming back. So this idea of having these more curated events in the game of Upland, Upland is going to have more of them. Obviously, they said G Week, some of the virtual events that are available to everybody, whether you go to live or not. We'll expect to see some of those. But there's a concept that Adana also brought up is these curated events do not have to come from Upland. They don't have to be curated. So things of that nature, things that type have been built through dev shops or built through communities in Upland. If you want to do a specific event, you can build it. It's going to be a little bit of work on your part. You may have to have access to somebody who is a developer in order to do it. You may need to learn some development skills yourself to really put together this type of experience together. But these experiences can be put together outside of the game of the team of Upland. That would, if you ask me, that would fall under the idea of real decentralization, where the content itself or some of the directions of the content are not directly being driven by a host company or a sponsor company or a operator like Upland. So it's kind of interesting to see that be dropped as a hint, wink, wink, nod, nod, hey, get to work type suggestion there from Adon. So Hey, wink, wink, nod, nod, hint, hint, get to work. Love to see more of those items. I mean, a lot of people love them. You know, treasure hunting's a thing, racing's a thing. There's other elements of the game with, you know, these dev shops that already exist, that there's other gamifications you can participate in. But more can exist. People can invent can invent and create individual items or individual events to happen over a short period of time. It would be great. It will be great. I'd love to see it. A couple items, other items here. I didn't really catch a lot at the end for, you know, big be all end all long terms to come. Other than the fact that they got kind of big be all end all long term things to come. The idea of drawing out with some things that are coming here for Genesis Week, some things that are coming as far as the future incentivization or how this Sparklet fund is being used or can be used to incentivize some growth in multiple layers of Upland. The idea that a portion of the Sparklet, or there's a budget built into the Sparklet, an advertising type budget, to incentivize developers to build items and events that are going to utilize Sparklet. And there's ways to incentivize developers to use Sparklet in novel and unique and new ways. So have Sparklet potentially have a staking component in an off-site game, in the layer 2 game, that says if you stake this Sparklet in this game, you're going to get glinglows or whatever, you know, staking for a non-native token or staking for a gamified event, all built in through a developer layer 2 dev shop potentially. So that's kind of exciting to see that concept. That's something that ties into and builds into and is part of the future development of the developer network, or of the layer 2 ecosystem. So excited to see that get discussed as well. But otherwise, I don't know what else I'm missing, but I know it's coming. So there's a few more items that are going to be that are going to be key and part of the rest of this quarter. We've kind of got little drips and drops that there is stuff that is going to all lead towards Genesis Week. Some of those things that lead to Genesis Week aren't fully discussed yet, and they will be discussed further. So looking forward to that. But a big one here, the big kind of couch thing, was we were talking about how Sparklet's a big part of the future of the game of Upland, and we've got a lot of it coming, a lot more to come. But it needs to, we need to have more information on that. And as we get closer to that Sparklet launch, that's obviously when we're going to potentially get more information, more discussion about the plans in the future for utility and immediate utility. As that white paper gets further developed, the idea of the incentivization for the developers in the layer 2 space to utilize Sparklet and how they're going to get rewarded potentially for that utilization, that could be better defined. So we're going to have more discussion on Sparklet for sure. But for the overall update, I can put one spin on it, and I'll put it as a spin, is I liked that this was a curated AMA. I liked the idea that it had a process flow and it had different elements of the game, and it wasn't 17 questions about Sparklet, which I'm sure there was hundreds of questions from people about Sparklet. I like that Sparklet was a part of it, but I also like that, elements of the racing and the future of the game and the devs and some little small pips and pops of things that people have asked for a long time and have not gotten answers when they've asked them, that they've gotten those answers. So this was a well put together AMA as far as I'm concerned. We got a lot of information. And of course, people are going to say, there was some burning and important questions that didn't get answered. It's always the way it's going to be. There's a number of questions that get answered. I'm sure there's some questions that didn't have great answers to be given, and there was also just a brevity of time. So it was good that we got as much as we did over that period of time. I think that the answers were not there just as fluff. There was a couple answers that were very vague. Eventually, answers, but eventually is a good answer if I'm thinking, hey, this idea, this concept's been discarded. The drivers for cars is playing a role in the aspect of how well your race goes, or modifying your race functionality by having a different driver. that was a concept that I didn't know was still being developed. It's nice to know it's still being developed and considered. Otherwise, at this point, I do want to put one more note out. One more note. We did actually have an announcement today, or actually, I guess it was a live update. Live update after the AMA. We did get the Spark Weekend reminder, 9 a.m. PT that kicked off. We are still in Blossom season, so we still have those weekends of Spark weekends. Sparks for sale, registration open now, sale on Saturday. The overall through the weekend, we do still have the level up incentives. So if you have recently leveled up or qualified to level up but not yet leveled up, if you level up during the weekend, you do get that enhanced Spark reward. If you level up during the weekend and choose to hit the level up button over the weekend, you do get the Spark up reward. So keep that in mind, that will be here for the rest of the weekend until Monday the 29th at 9 a.m. PT. That's exciting to get you through the weekend. And then otherwise, we'll look into the next week. 2 items to have for next week. We have Collection Reveal next Thursday. Keep that in mind. We do have a terminal sale on Monday. So our Monday registration, Tuesday sale on that. So those are big items to have blocked out in your calendar. On the DC sale and the DC terminal sale, we are going to have 9 terminals, I think. 9 terminals for air, 9 terminals for international air, domestic 9, international 9, and then 18, it looks like 9 and 9 for the trains. So trains from the airport, trains from or trains at in the city of DC. So back and forth. So there's 2 sets of trains, 2 sets of planes. Makes sense to me. Otherwise, do keep your eyes out. We are headed towards Genesis Week. We are going to get more information about the hackathon at some point in the near future. We may get more details about Genesis Week in the meantime as well. And there's still time. There's still time to make the decision to go. Having Spark as a mission, as part of an in-person event for airdrop, it is not something to be missed. So keep that in mind as you make a decision about whether or not you can make it a Genesis Week in-person event 2024 this year. And of course, as dropped, as discussed in the AMA, very big and very key, there's going to be a ton of other Genesis Week events for those who can't make it in person. So it's going to be some fun. It's going to be some fun, and it's going to be some prizes. It's going to be some information about the future of the game of Upland. Looking forward to it. D-Tech, I love the Days Since Totems post in Totems chat. It's all about what? It's also a place where Jesus art is now posted in there in the Days Since Totems. Yes, so that was part of it, D-Tech. That was a good point. Part of it was it's been a long time since we had some totems, but yes, the next totem cycle is coming, is going to be different than it had been before. So maybe D-Tech, that next set of totems is one more thing to keep your eye on. So for tonight, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming. Do go and look yourself. If you haven't got a chance to do so yet, I always recommend doing so. I always recommend going to the horse's mouth. Watch the AMA. You might pick up something different than the key takeaways. I like to try to put things in the broad strokes. But again, there might be something real fine tune in there. You like the way Adon said something. And, you're not going to know that. You're not going to know you like the way Adon pronounces a specific word. There was a couple that were interesting. You're not going to know if you like the way Adon pronounces a specific word if you don't go and watch the AMA yourself. So take the time. Watch it on 1.5 speed if that's all you got for time. Watch it on half speed if you want to hear his accent nice and slow. So thank you so much for being here tonight. As always, if you are in the Upland Cafe, feel free to unmute your mics. The floor is going to be yours to take over here in a second, but I do want to just say we're here Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. PT. Love to see you. Love to have you here Tuesdays and Fridays in the Upland Plaza. Otherwise, always on YouTube 5 days a week and on Upland Discord. Love to keep that up within the voice. If you want to be there. And then you can, of course, always use the Upland chat to interact throughout the show with other Uplanders, but also ask questions, get answers. Thank you so much for being here. For those in the Upland Cafe Discord, the floor is yours.